Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for stopping by today. Today I am creating a card, doing some dry embossing and a little bit of ink blending and a little bit of splatter. This is using Visible Images' new release products, this fabulous bee stamp set called Be Happy. And then I am also going to use this new stencil called Honeycomb Hex. I love the stamp set because it's got one large bee and then it's got four smaller bees, as well as a honeycomb and then a little bit of kind of like splatter stamp almost, and then this fabulous stencil called Honeycomb Hex. And I'm going to start out with the dry embossing. So I've taken my Big Shot sandwich and I've removed the one thin platform, and then I'm going to add a cutting plate, and then I'm going to add my rubber mat, and then I'm going to lay my cardstock down and then the stencil on top of that, and then I will put the other cutting plate on top of that and run that through my die cut machine. And it's going to give a really cool dry embossed look, almost like using an embossing folder in a way. And so hopefully you can see the impression that that leaves. I am using Bristol Smooth cardstock for this paper, and I have cut that 5.5 by 5.5, and then I went ahead and cut a circle out of the middle of that. And then behind that circle I am going to add the ink for the honeycomb. And then once I have the stencil where I want it, where it's going to be peeking through that circle, I'm going to take a piece of low-tack tape and add that. And then I'm going to be using some distress inks, and I'm going to start out with the lightest color that I'm using, which is going to be mustard seed. So I'm just going to grab my blending brush and blend that color lightly through the stencil. And then I'm going to grab the next color and blend that through the stencil, and this is a distress ink in the color Wild Honey. And then the last color that I'm going to use is a distress ink also, and this is Aged Mahogany. And I'm going to go ahead, and that blends really nicely and just kind of darkens up that yellow a little bit. And so I'm going to lightly add that around the honeycomb, and then I do go back over that a little bit with the yellow just to blend that out a little bit better and blend that mahogany color into the background. And then I'm going to remove my stencil. I spritz the background with water, and then I'm going to wait about 10 seconds or so. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and spread that over to blot up that water and give those little small watermarks on the ink. And then I'm going to take the wild honey and the mustard seed and kind of swatch them off to the side and then activate them with water. And then I'm going to add a little bit of splatter. So I'm going to spritz the ink swatches that I have there and take my paintbrush and add some splatter to this background, as well as the panel that's going to go over that, which is the panel that was dry embossed. So I'll go ahead and add a little bit of splatter to that background as well. And then I'm going to get out my favorite gold metallic watercolor. I believe these are called CYS watercolors. I'm not sure if they're available any longer, but if they are, I will link them below. It's just a really pretty gold color. And then I'm going to take some white ink and water that down and splatter that as well. And so I'm going to do that over both panels as well. And it just gives this really pretty, a splotchy look. I don't know if it's splotchy or not, but it's really pretty. I love that gold watercolor. And then I'm going to stamp up the bees. So I've already got all of my bees stamped up, as well as the sentiment Be Happy. And I am taking some Versafine Black ink. And the paper I'm using for this is the Accent Opaque White, and I kind of messed up on this. I should have stamped it onto a Bristol or something like that, because I am using my Tombows with this. I don't know if I hadn't planned that out or I just grabbed the wrong paper, but it ended up working out fine. But I went ahead and stamped that image up and then covered it with some clear embossing powder, and then I'm going to take my heat tool and heat that embossing powder and melt it and make that really shiny black. And then I just want the wings, because I'm going to have the wings pop up, so I'm going to color those. And this is a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, the scrap that I have. So I'm going to ink up those wings again in some Versafine Black. And I just want the wings, so which is why I have that little piece of paper, and I will just go ahead and fussy cut those out. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stamp those up and then cover that with some clear embossing powder and heat set that. And that'll allow me to color those wings and pop those up on top of the original image. And then I felt like the panel needed a little bit more color, and so I'm taking the wild honey and mustard seed and going around the outside edge of the panel, and then I'm going to take a finger dauber and go around the inside edge just to darken that up a little bit. And this is when I realized that I used the wrong paper, because it's very hard to move Tombows on that accent opaque white. It's not really made for water and moving that color. But because it was such a small area, it worked out just fine. I used my Tombows in 025 and 026 for the body of the bee, and then for the wings I'm using 401 and 526, and I just went ahead and colored all of the little bees and then the wings as well that I'm going. And then I wanted to add a little bit more depth to the honeycomb, and so what I've done is I've taken a watercolor pencil and traced off that edge portion of the honeycomb, and then I'm going to go in with my brush with a little bit of water on it, and I'm just going to kind of blend that out really lightly, just to give the effects of a little bit of depth so it doesn't look so flat. And then I'm also going to take my brush and kind of go through the distress ink, and since distress ink is reactive to water, it gives this really cool effect, kind of like a drip almost, and so I go ahead and try and do that as well. And then I'm going to fussy cut the bee out. It wasn't as difficult as it looks, I guess, but I did end up cutting off one of the antenna. Luckily I found it in my little scraps and was able to glue it back on, but I am sorry I didn't have a lot of this in the camera view. I try and get close so I can see it, and it doesn't always stay in camera view, and I don't realize that I'm off screen. So I went ahead and I fussy cut all of those. So you can see this right here, the piece of his leg is missing there. And so like I said, I found it and then I glued it back on. And then I'm taking a black micron pen. I'm just going around the edges to try and hide the areas that I missed when I was fussy cutting. So any portion that was white, I went ahead and tried to fill that in with that black micron pen. And then I'm taking some liquid adhesive on that main panel that the circle was die cut through and adhering that. And then I'm going to set a block on that and let that dry while I add the wings. So I added a little bit of foam to the wings as well as some liquid adhesive. I'm going to put the liquid adhesive right on the edge, or the side that's closest to the body, and I'm just going to hold that down, and then the foam is going to pop those up. And the bee's going to be sitting partially on the inside of that circle and partially on the outside. So I've added a piece of paper on the back of the bee in the area that's going to be sitting inside of that circle, just to make up for the height difference, which is very minimal between the die cut circle and that outside panel. And then I added a little bit of liquid glue, and I'm just going to go ahead and push that down and adhere that. And then I will take the other little bees and add them around the panel. And then I went ahead and matted the card, which it looks like I've already done on this shot, and matted the card on some black cardstock, and that is in the size of 5 3/4 and 5 3/4. And then I matted the sentiment as well onto some black cardstock. Then I'm going to take my gold watercolor again, and I'm going to paint the back of the stamp. This is the honeycomb stamp that is in the set. So I'm just going to take my paintbrush and paint that on the back, and then push that around several areas of the card panel. And that's pretty much going to finish this card off. This bee stamp set has been on pre-sale orders, one of the most popular ones from this new release. I will go ahead and leave links where you can purchase this. In the United States, I don't know where it's at right now. Usually scrapbook.com will carry it, and but I don't think they have it yet. So I will go ahead and leave links where I can. But if you are in the States and you are waiting on this, it will be coming out eventually. It just might not have gone to all the retailers yet. But that is my card for today. If you like this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. As always, I thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.